A new outbound record has been set from a brand new hire who had zero sales experience, never done cold calling or outbound before in his life. His only experience that he had was doing network marketing in the past, right? You know, network marketing and outbound sales, not even the same category. So this was a new skill for him. He booked 14 appointments, calendar appointments, doing cold calls his very first week. Immediately got promoted to a closing position 3 weeks later because he had the process down. And in his first month closing, he earned himself over $5,000 in personal payout commissions from following system and process. So I actually got with him and asked him, I said, listen, obviously from you never doing sales before, never doing outbound, I know he's taken like other courses and programs and stuff like that before learning sales, but obviously never doing outbound. I asked him, what was the biggest thing that you feel like you have learned from me that was different than anyone else? And he told me something very interesting that I didn't really think about. And he said, dude, honestly, your topics of you working with us on the team and talking about frames and doing frame control, he said, I have never heard anyone in the industry talk about that before or teach it. And that was the biggest light bulb moment for me, right? And when he told me that was his light bulb moment, it was also my light bulb moment. So I figured, hey, what the heck, why not cover frame control for you guys in today's video, because it is absolutely very, very important. Before we get into frame control, I want to say thank you guys so much. We finally have reached over 400 subscribers on the channel, right? Always like to celebrate the small wins. Of course, I'm going to be consistent for you guys, so I wanted to celebrate that with you guys now that I'm so YouTube famous, right? Say thank you guys so much for the support. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please do so, right? Next goal, I'm going to aim for 1,000 subscribers here on the channel and keep giving you guys value each and every single day. Let's go ahead and dive into frame control. Like, what does this even mean for you if you are in sales, right? So think of a frame literally like a picture frame, right? A square. This is the lens of which your prospect is seeing things that you are telling them, okay? If you could control the frame of which a prospect sees things, what kind of frame would you choose? And also, I want to explain the importance of being able to maintain and hold that frame throughout the conversation. This is something I really harp on with everyone on our sales teams, my client sales teams. I teach this to everyone over Zoom and we kind of do it, but I figured why not cover this in a video, not only for you on YouTube, but also for them to go back and review as people get onboarded. So now we have onboarding for frame control right here on YouTube. Woohoo, great stuff. So now that you notice the lens, let me give you an example, okay? Let's choose something very polarizing. As you guys know, sometimes you may see in news media, and something like a hot topic, right? Maybe police brutality to somebody, right? You know, and every single time you watch a video on police brutality, what do you think happens? Most people choose a side, right? Even though everyone saw the same video on police brutality, you always have in the comments people saying one or the other, right? Oh man, the police officer did this, he was at fault. And then you have the other people being like, well, they did this, this, and this, and they kind of deserved it. Which is really interesting, right? Even though everyone saw the camera angles, the same lens, right? The frame that was there, it was still perceived differently by two parties, even though they watched the same thing. So knowing this, when it comes to sales and closing and appointment setting and all this fun stuff, especially if you're going to be getting into outbound, it is very important that you get really good at controlling the frame that the prospect perceives the information, right? So that there's no disconnect, right? So let's say you were going to do value frame. Let me use this as an example. Like you wanted to reach out to someone to give them value, or maybe you go up to someone and you say, who's mowing their lawn. If I walk to someone that's mowing their lawn and let's say I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna give them value. I'm gonna do value frame, right? And then say like, hey, you know, it looks like you're struggling with there. I'd really like to go up and help you with mowing your lawn, right? Is that cool? You know, what if I could take the lawn off of your back, right? And I want to do it completely for free. And then all of a sudden they agree to it. And then you say, well, okay, cool. Well, here's my services. It's kind of a disconnect, right? It doesn't really make sense because you just said, hey, you want to do this for free. You want to give them value. And then you all of a sudden start talking about products and services, right? Those are two very obvious disconnects that does not match the frame of what you just said, right? You can't go to somebody and say, hey, let me give you value, let's do this for free, and then here's my services and my packages, right? Now that's extreme. Now, even though it's common sense that that is extreme, you'd be surprised how many people make the mistake all the time, right? Take an example, previous teams that I've trained before on webinars, doing outbound for people who have watched a webinar. One of the frames that we would use for a lot of 7 and 8 figure influencers as we scaled our team was leaning on the training, right? Someone sees an ad, they opt into a webinar, and they go and watch the training. So we would call them, and the frame would be, notice that you saw the training on X, Y, and Z, but you didn't get a chance to book a call with our team, right? Did you even get the chance to watch the training, right? That's kind of like the frame. Like, did you watch the training? Notice you didn't get to book a call with our team, okay? Now, imagine what, and it's funny enough, people would make the mistake and they'd be so confused, and then all of a sudden they would start talking about a program or a course, right? Put yourselves in the shoe of the prospect and realize that if you just received a phone call and they're like, okay, this is so-and-so with this person's team. We saw that you watched their training, but you didn't get a chance to book a call with our team. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch it, right? I had to go pick up my daughter from school and I completely forgot about it, right? Oh, well, what really interested you in their program? Now, traditionally, most webinars will usually go through a webinar, and if they're pitching a course or program, they will not know about the course and program until when? You guessed it, the end of the webinar. So if I'm on the phone with a prospect and and they tell me, oh, I didn't get a chance to watch a webinar, right? And then I say, oh, what really interested you in their program? The prospect has no idea that a program even exists, right? Automatically, there's a disconnect of the frame that I set, because it doesn't make sense. Why am I talking about a course or a program if I'm calling somebody and asking about them actually registering for the webinar, right? Now, there are kind of transitions. There's ways throughout the process of the sales process, like I help a lot of people implement, where there is a transition between frames, of course, right? But as you can see from this example, automatically there would be a disconnect. It seems simple in theory, but a lot of people make this mistake all the time, okay? So choosing a frame, for example, value frame, if I were to stick to value frame, it's very important that when I'm interacting with somebody that the entire thing on the frame is only related to value, right? Giving them value until the opportunity comes later to where maybe an offer or another call or something could exist, right? Very, very important on that. Also, I want to cover another concept that is called frame stacking, okay? Frame stacking. This is when I think of the frame that people are looking through, and sometimes prospects will also want to put frames in your direction. So imagine every time someone stacks a frame on you in a sales position that it's a weight, right? They take a frame and they stack it on you. Boom. Every time a frame gets put onto your head, I want you to imagine it weighing you down, okay? It's getting heavier and heavier and heavier. So anytime a frame is stacked on you by a prospect, that is something that prospect now gets to leverage later in their benefit, okay? And what a lot of people don't realize is when frames are actually stacked on them, they have no idea. Typically when I'm doing things like call reviews and call breakdowns, I'll usually pause for the person I'm doing the review for and point out, by the way, they just stacked a frame on you. If you don't address this later, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt. They're going to leverage it. So it's very important to be aware of when frames are stacked on you, and I'll give you examples of that in a moment. But by the way, if you want to be a part of things like call breakdowns and call reviews, make sure you guys are in my B2B outbound Facebook group completely for free. We cover things like sales trainings, Zoom calls, and we will also do things like closers and setters of the month, let you guys submit things like your calls and do reviews and things like that to give you guys value when it comes to sales. So if you're not in the group, definitely check it out. If you're interested in learning anything related to outbound, it does not matter if you are a sales person or an entrepreneur, business owner, it does not matter. In this group, we cover everything from sales systems to training and the process. And the best part of it is, as well, is we will also, after processes are put in place, you'll have the opportunity to be connected with each other. So if you are a business owner looking to get an outbound and you're going to want to have people who are learning how to do sales, You're going to want to be a part of the group because there'll be opportunities for you to post job postings and vice versa. If you're looking for an opportunity to do outbound with a proven process, then you're definitely going to make sure you are in the group. I will put a link down below in the description so you guys can check it out. So let's get back into the frame stacking, right? So let's say you are an agency owner or you're closing for an agency, right? And you know that your offer, your product and service is going to be something like Facebook ads, okay? You know that Facebook ads is your jam. And you're doing outbound or whether it's inbound, it actually doesn't really matter. You're on the phone with a prospect and then you're starting talking about marketing and then all of a sudden, the prospect just sneaks in a little subtle note of, yeah, I've tried a bunch of stuff in the past. I hate Facebook. I don't like it. It doesn't work. No interest in that. I've tried things like Google ads and blah, blah, blah. We've tried SEO, we've tried all these different things, but I'm open to new strategies and things like that, right? Subtly, right, if you know there's going to be a disconnect later that your offer is going to be included with Facebook ads and they just stacked on to you, subtly, they just said, hey, I have no desire to do Facebook ads, it doesn't work, right? That is them actually taking that frame and stacking it on you. And if you do not address the frame throughout the call, you're going to deal with resistance later when it comes to pitching them. Why? Because the prospect literally just told you that they have no desire to get into Facebook ads because they believe that it does not work, right? So, of course, if you offer it, they're going to be like, well, no, I told you before it doesn't work. So before I ever go to the pitch and the offer, I want to make sure that I bring that up. How would you do that? Anytime people stack frames on you, right? Sometimes people, even in calls, will say things like, I have no desire to invest. I'm not going to pay any money up front. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I believe this. I believe that, right? They will subtly put all these different types of frames on you that you don't even know exists. And you want to take it off either immediately or have a mental note to address it later, right? Bring it up. So cool. So listen, earlier, I remembered, you had said something very interesting. You said that you had tried Facebook ads in the past, but it didn't work out for you, right? They're gonna be like, right. What I'm doing now is I'm addressing the frame and I'm going to reframe them, write this down, reframe them on why Facebook ads actually does work, right? It is important. It's very important. So if anyone that is in my, my B2B outbound group, on Facebook or have seen my call reviews and stuff in the past, you guys will hear me use this terminology and it's called reframing, right? Reframing is just simply changing the lens that a prospect has put onto you and basically reframing their belief. So most frames are typically stacked on you are going to be a belief that a prospect has, and is your job as a sales rep or a closer or whatever you want to call yourself to reframe that prospect on that belief by changing them. We do this with things like storytelling, right? So if I know someone has a belief, I have to be able to tell a story and reframe them and deal with as many frames as I possibly can so that I will have enough a shot to be able to build value, be able to close them. And a lot of times we're just stuck in sales, confused at the end, not understanding what happened, right? Maybe you've been in a position where you built a ton of rapport with the prospect and you're like, man, we're just in flow. I really like them. They really like me. And I just don't understand why it is that they went before and they don't see the value. It could have been that they stacked you with frames before. You just didn't address the frame, right? Now, the reason why I've never really covered this topic before on the channel is because it's kind of advanced, right? So when I was managing a team of 50 to 60 reps for multiple 7 and 8 figure influencers, right? That's obviously a large team. We had a lot of people on. And kind of the cadence of what I would do is I would teach them the fundamentals first, and I kept frame control and frame stacking later and secondary after I knew people had the basics, okay? So when I say the basics of fundamentals, I mean things like mastering your introduction, right? The first 4 seconds of the call, whether it's inbound or outbound, knowing the basics and the fundamentals is very, very important. The first 4 seconds matter, even on a Zoom inbound call, which is known as setting the agenda, right? Mastering the intro, setting the agenda, things like that is very, very basic and fundamental and also very important. Things like your tonality, right? Things like understanding who it is you're talking to and personalities, right? Even personalities can get advanced, but it doesn't matter. So once people had the fundamentals down, then I would teach them advanced things like frame control and frame stacking and all these reframing things later. the second phase after I knew that they focus on the fundamentals. So don't get so caught up and overwhelmed with what I'm telling you right now if you're new to sales. Really still focus on the fundamentals, and then we will address frame control and all that fun stuff later. But even though this is advanced, I still want it to be a good value lesson for you so that you can at least be aware of what is going on when it comes to reframing and frame control and stacking, right? And what's cool is like sometimes prospects may not even realize it, but when you reframe them and you talk about beliefs and you state something as like a fact, you are also stacking a frame on them. Now, sometimes what will happen is if you take a belief as a appointment setter or a closer or an entrepreneur, whatever your belief is, and you say it and they don't really like claim that belief, sometimes they will kind of fight your frame. I call that fighting your frame, right? Frames that will clash. It's a clash of beliefs. And it's very, very important that anytime a prospect's frame that they are holding does not match your frame and it cannot move forward, you can either try to reframe them or you will just have to make the decision to just disqualify them, right? Sometimes not every prospect is going to be at the stage of identity, right? If you're following and subscribed to the channel, you know what I'm talking about of how identity is important. It is everything when it comes to high ticket. It could just be an identity issue and they're just not there yet, which is completely okay, right? Understanding frame control and being aware of it. I'll do a separate video talking about kind of like mindset when it comes to that. Because I know a lot of people, they feel like they will take responsibility, which is good, but it'll also eat them up and thinking that they're doing something wrong when it comes to the fact of just sometimes your prospect's identity just isn't at where it's supposed to be, okay? And that's not on you, that's on them. It's your job just to qualify them, right? And do the best of your ability and obviously obsess over getting better, right? So reframing, you got frame stacking, taking the frame off when they put it on you. Let me try to give you another example. Remembering frames, right? So let's say somebody stacks you with a time frame, okay? They're just like, hey, cool, I'll hear you out. I only have 10 minutes and then I have to run. I'm rushing over to a meeting, right? What they're doing is they're stacking a frame on you, putting time. What did they just do? They said, hey, I only have 10 minutes, right? Now, it's very, very important in the sense of when someone stacks a time frame on you that you respect their time, right? You don't have to try to combat it. A really, really good book that I always recommend when it comes to things like time frame and power frame and all these things is called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. It is one of my all-time favorite sales books. I make it mandatory for everyone on my sales team to actually go and read that book, listen to it on audio, etc. It is the only book that I read once a year because it is that good. It's absolutely amazing when it comes to understanding things like the frame, the authority frame, power frame, all the things that prospects will do and being aware to address it. Highly recommend you give that a read. No, I do not get any type of affiliate commissions. I just love the book and I know it's going to help you if you actually read it. So definitely check that out. But in the book, one thing he talks about with time frame is like sometimes you can make it a game. So to me, I love sales because when it comes to reframing and battling frames with other people, I'm sadistic. It's fun for me, right? You know, my natural personality type on 16 personalities is ENTP, which is known as the debater. I love to debate people. I love to show my expertise and my knowledge and really combat that, not in a negative way, not combat as in confrontational, right? So anytime there's a battle of framing, it's very important that you're never confrontational with a prospect. There are ways to reframe people, which was going to come through tons of time and training. Nothing that we're going to be able to cover in this video today on how to reframe somebody that's difficult without being combative. That's going to come through like repetition. And obviously I would have to hear your sales calls to be able to give you feedback on that. But time frame, like in the book, he talks about if someone says, well, hey, I only have 10 minutes, right? How can you take the frame off? He would do things like, oh, well, great, because I only have 5. Right? Let me say that again. So they'd be like, hey, I only have 10 minutes. Notice how they stack a frame on me, right? And I take it off. Oh, no problem. I only have 5 minutes. Boom. Perfect. I only have 5. Notice how I'm taking the frame off and I'm putting it back on them, right? That's what it means by stacking the frame back and forth, right? And then, sometimes if they're really, really good at sales, it's just a fun game. They'll be like, oh, well, I only have 2, right? And just to laugh, right? It's fun. So, sales doesn't have to be boring and monotonous, right? If you really enjoy this like I do, you can make a game at it. It's really fun challenge and you're going to meet amazing people, right? So just being aware of that. So let me give you a final example of things like power frame and authority, right? automatically, who has control of the frame when you get pulled over by a police officer, right? Off the bat, you see the lights, you hear the sirens going off, right? You see the red and you see the blue, we're triggered for it. We know, oh crap, the police officer is control. They automatically have the authority frame, right? They come up to you, they lean over, they're showing their dominance. They tell you to, show your driver's license, right? What happens every single time, right? Your heart starts beating faster and faster and faster. You get nervous, right? Because we know that they have the authority, right? Things like doctor offices, when you go in to see the doctor, what do they make you do? They establish that they have the power frame because you have to walk in before ever seeing the doctor. You have to go up to the receptionist. They're going to say, here, they stack frames on. Here, we're in control. Go fill out this clipboard. Bring it back up to me when you're done, right? You know that they have the power. They make you sit. You wait 30 to 45 minutes and finally get to go see the doctor. The doctor is in control and has the authority and power frame over the entire time, right? Definitely read the book because he talks about fun ways to be able to overcome power and authority frame. But so when it comes to reframing, just understand that the easiest way to reframe somebody, so if somebody has a frame and you're just like, gosh, there's no way I can actually close this individual because they believe this, this, and this, and you want to change their belief, the best way to do it is, first of all, you have to get them to agree to something. So I always like to get, like I talk about in previous videos, a head nod, right? Anytime someone says yes and they agree, I'm not only establishing more rapport with them, but I'm getting them to say yes. And that's the starting point of doing a reframe, is getting them to agree yes, right? And to go then and change their belief. And this is where you would say, well, hey, well, typically, when this and this and this happens, most people will fall into this and to that, right? Does that ever happen with you? And I'd be like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. Awesome. Well, listen, in my experience, the reason why that happens is because they don't have this, this, and this in place. It seems like that's what's happening here. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, you're so right. The moment that the prospect starts having these epiphanies and they're like, oh my gosh, he's right. That's how you're actually changing that belief and you're reframing them, right? So let's go back to the early example. I'll give you a freebie. I'll tell you what I say all the time. When someone says something like Facebook ads don't work, like, you know what? Hey, just Facebook ads doesn't work. I don't believe it, boom, right? I'll typically say things like, well, listen, when it comes to Facebook ads, we all know they're a multi-billion-dollar company, right? Pause. Notice what I'm doing. Well, we know that Facebook is a multi-billion-dollar company, right? Which I guess, I don't know. I guess you call them Meta now, call them Facebook, whatever. We're just going to say Facebook to keep this simple. And more than 9 times out of 10, guess what they say? They say yes. That's a head nod. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, the reason why, as an advertising company, they're making so much money is because there are people spending millions of dollars into Facebook, right? And you and I could both agree they wouldn't be spending that type of money into Facebook if it wasn't profitable and wouldn't work, right? And again, they're going to be like, well, yeah, gotcha. So it's not that Facebook doesn't work. It sounds like that just you had a bad experience with Facebook in the past and it just didn't work for you. Boom. That's the third right. Notice how each layer, I'm getting them to say yes, and I'm chipping away from getting them to agree with me at the belief. I'm reframing them to now change the new belief that, wait a second, Facebook ads doesn't work. And now I'm like breaking the frame, tossing it aside and saying, no, the reality is that we can agree that's silly, that Facebook ads just didn't work for you, right? And now here's the other cool part. Once I reframe them, now I get to go into, well, why didn't Facebook work for you? Right? If we already established that it's not Facebook, right? That means that something is going on with whatever's going on with your process and what you did that just didn't work out for you, but other people are doing it accurately. Let's dive into that and see what the actual cause is. Now, notice how I'm able to reframe a prospect, and now I'm going deep into the actual cause of the problem and not just the silly belief that Facebook doesn't work, right? But it's very, very important that in the terms of frame control that I address the frame that they stacked on me of them saying, well, hey, Facebook doesn't work. And I'm like, nope, toss it aside, right? So as you develop in your career and your industry, the different types of frames that people will stack on you, I mean, we don't have time to go into the abundance of possibilities, right? It's very important that you understand the resistance that you get from prospects, the beliefs of your marketplace, really focusing industry specific. The other challenge is if you are in a very broad market and you're not really niche down. I know a lot of people talk about niching down. This is also why. Like if you have 5 different niches, imagine how hard it is to duplicate that process, right? So with my main client that I'm partners with, right, I talked about in the previous video, we not only had this new rep also set a record for the team, but we hired brand new people from scratch in January 2022. And last month, January, February, March, in April, we cracked $108,000 in revenue doing cold calling and outbound, literally strictly outbound. None of it came from ad revenue and ad spend. And yes, we are running money in ads. This was strictly a brand new offer that was launched in January, brand new offer, high ticket, and was able to do that and generate that much revenue in one single month, right? But also we are so focused on niche specific and understanding the beliefs of the marketplace. Imagine the challenge of being able to take somebody who's never had sales experience before, who's never done setting, has never done closing and never done outbound. And then now all of a sudden I'm slapping them with having the knowledge of 5 different niches and industries, because I don't care what anyone says watching this video. You may think that you can help everyone and you could be broad, but when it comes to focus and scalability, it is very, very difficult to hit the ground running and getting people up to speed in a timely manner because you're focused on just so many different things at once. The frames and the beliefs and the resistance you're going to get is different for all 5. And there's no way you're going to take someone on your team and have them learn all these things throughout trial and error and over time. We just really were able to focus and niche down on a specific industry and being caught up. So it is very important that if you're mastering frame control, that you understand the niche that you are focused on. And yeah, so I hope this was insightful and valuable. Definitely the next time you are on a sales call or in a conversation, be aware of the lens that you are portraying, right? Ask yourself, is what I am saying right now, is it matching from A to Z? If I'm setting an appointment and then I'm hopping onto a sales call, am I maintaining the same frame that was set, right? Always think about that. This is also why when people come in and want to get hired for a closing opportunity for one of my clients, I make it mandatory for them to start in a setting role regardless of their closing experience, right? People are always like, well, that's silly. I have tons of experience closing. Yes, but what you don't know are the ins and outs of the frame that is being set. And if you get on a closing call and you're not matching the same frame that was set by the setter, you already have a disconnect and you're failing. It's very important that you understand it from A to Z. So everyone must go through the ropes of escalating from going from understanding the frame that's being set to the closing process so that it matches, right? That it matches. For instance, let me give you a final example. Back to the whole program thing. People make this mistake all the time. You have a closer on here who will all of a sudden start talking about a program, and you have a setter who was maybe had called someone and said to give value and said, hey, what if we can just to give you value for being a loyal follower of brand influencer's name, right? You know that you get a complimentary call for 30 to 45 minutes where we'll take a look at XYZ and we can actually set a game plan and help you out, right? So now the frame that was set was the expectation of the prospect to go on to the closing call, right? Thinking that they're going to get value. But what happens if they get on the closing call and then all of a sudden the agenda that is set by the closer is saying, yeah, we just want to see if you're a good fit for XYZ program, right? So we're gonna take a look at this, this, and this, and see if the coaching program would be able to help you. You guys see how automatically, like from the frame that was set, there's an automatic disconnect by the time they get onto the closing call? See that, right? They're gonna be like, well, that's so weird. The person I spoke to said I was hopping on a call for 30 minutes so that they can actually just help me do blah, 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 right? And now the prospect is pissed, right? And the closer is confused because they don't understand what the frame was that was gonna be set, right? They completely botched the agenda. Everybody has to be on the same page when it comes to outbound, especially, right? Same thing when it comes to inbound. Now, if you're on an inbound team or you're running inbound, whatever frame is set on your ads, right? I always get to my clients and stuff whenever they're running ads and they're like, oh, cool, we're booking appointments. They got it handled. I'm like, no. They don't have it handled. It is very important for you as a business owner to show the copy, the messaging, the VSL, let the closer see the ads so that they understand what is being said, what tonality, what tone you're setting pace for everything, and what frame it is that the ads are trying to maintain, because the frame must be matched throughout the entire process so there is no disconnect. If somebody sees an ad, which is no different than an appointment setter, by the way, it's just effort versus paid, right? And then there's a disconnect on the closing call from the ad, and the frame, the lens that was set from the ad is not matching, then all of a sudden your closer is set up for failure because they have no idea that there's a disconnect in the frame. Something to be aware of. Hope this was valuable to you guys. If you liked this, make sure that you share it with anyone on your team so that they can get value as well. As always, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notification bells so you'll get notified when the next training video comes out. Hope you found this valuable, and I'll see you guys on the next video.